The aliens thought we'd destroy ourselves. They watched from above, silent, detached as Earth burned in war. But we didn't die. We evolved. And now, we see them. And we're not coming for vengeance. We're coming to be remembered. The transmission began with static. Then came the screams. Shrill. Desperate. Unfiltered. Dozens of alien eyes, some with lenses, some with shimmering orbs, others compound and insect-like, turned toward the projection screen aboard the Coalition Highwatch, a massive orbital vessel positioned just beyond Earth's atmosphere. What they saw wasn't a weather event. It wasn't a planetary quake. It was war. Raw, savage human war. Below, Earth burned. On every continent, plumes of smoke twisted skyward like black serpents. Fire lit up the night in unnatural flashes. Cities crumbled beneath bombardments. Fighter jets sliced across the sky in synchronized waves. Drones hovered, striking targets with cold precision. Troops in reinforced exocets thundered across the battlefield like metal titans. Buildings exploded. Bridges fell. Satellites rained from the heavens. And the humans cheered. Yes, they roared with triumph. As missiles launched, as bullets tore through air and flesh, as whole districts vanished into clouds of dust, there were still shouts of glory, of vengeance, of pride. The Galactic Coalition, a council of 37 advanced civilizations tasked with observing and guiding primitive life, sat in frozen disbelief. They had seen war before. Conflict was not unique to humans. But this was not mere tribal warfare or a clash of ideologies. This was madness masquerading as purpose. Overseer Ravel of the Jorthari, a pale blue being with flowing tendrils and crystalline skin, trembled. "Why do they fight their own kind?" she whispered, her voice like the chime of wind over glass. Beside her, Scholar a floating Zarlanite composed mostly of translucent jelly and memory threads, pulsed a deep indigo in distress. "They're celebrating war," he said, analyzing the thousands of human broadcasts. Songs, flags, marches. They've made conflict into ritual, into culture. He paused, filtering a new wave of audio. Screams, laughter, a human shouting, "This is our last stand. Let them come." Another voice, more composed, "For honor, for Earth." Voice grew quieter. "Is this a blood rite?" "No," came a low growl from across the chamber. Commander Trock of the Grolothian warbreed, the only species in the coalition with a warrior past, stepped forward. His skin was plated with dark obsidian armor, and his 4 eyes burned with grim recognition. "This," he rumbled, "is human nature." Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Dozens of delegates turned toward him, waiting. He didn't look at them. He stared only at the feed. At Earth. At the fire. "They are not like us," he continued. "When our worlds discovered nuclear energy, we used it for power. For propulsion. We feared it, respected it. But these humans," he gestured to the screen, "they built it, and used it as a weapon within years. Not once. Twice. Against their own." More footage streamed in. A flash of light from the eastern continent. Then a mushroom cloud. And another. And another. Humans didn't hesitate. They escalated. Quickly. Fatally. They had created weapons that could end their entire species, and rather than decommission them, they perfected them. Trock's voice was low now. Almost reverent. "They adapt like fire. And burn just as hot. But they never stop moving." Ravel looked away from the screen, her features pained. "They could have become something beautiful. We gave them satellite boosts, climate patches, gene-cleaning waves. We removed so many of their obstacles. And they turned them into tools of war," added. "They genetically modified soldiers. Hacked the weather to create lightning cannons. Their internet is now 80% weaponized misinformation." The chamber buzzed with uneasy clicks and murmurs. Delegates spoke over each other. Some frightened, others fascinated. "Why didn't we stop them earlier? We thought they were years from unity." "Unity? These creatures unite only to make bigger bombs. They fight together. Only when they need someone else to fight against." Yet even as the observers despaired, more footage came through. This time different. A medic, covered in ash and blood, dragging 2 wounded strangers, both from opposing sides, into shelter. A soldier refusing to fire on a convoy of civilians despite orders. A group of children singing in a subway tunnel as bombs shook the ground above. Trock pointed again. This is the paradox. The horror and the beauty. The same species that nukes their own cities will build hospitals in those ruins. They'll kill over a flag one day, and the next, they'll carry an enemy's child to safety. They defy logic, Ravel whispered. They defy extinction, Trock corrected. And that's what frightens me. Outside the ship's viewing dome, Earth rotated slowly, pale blue and scorched brown. Its orbit cluttered with debris, its air choked with smoke. But it turned still. Day became night. Night became day. And down below, humanity, bruised, bloodied but unbroken, kept fighting. Not just against each other. Against collapse. Against failure. Against fate. A final alert blinked across the observation screen. A broadcast intercepted from Earth. A woman's voice, strong and clear, spoke to any who could hear. We are not proud of what we've become. But we are not done. We never are. This is not the end. It's only another battle. If anyone out there is watching us, remember this: we bleed. We break. But we never bow. The signal cut. The chamber fell silent once more. Drifted backward, quivering. They know we're watching. Ravel turned to Trock. What do we do? Trock narrowed his eyes. We watch. But we prepare, he added darkly, for the day they stop fighting each other and come for us. The Galactic Coalition had been monitoring Earth for just under 2 centuries. From the beginning, humans had perplexed them. On one hand, they were intelligent and endlessly inventive. On the other, they were irrational, emotional, and self-destructive. The initial report filed by the Observer Council classified them as resourceful, adaptive, and volatile, but containable. A species to watch but not to worry about. Now that assessment lay in ruins, just like the cities burning across the planet. Across the central screen of the orbital monitoring chamber, real-time feeds showed chaos in every corner of Earth. Nations had collapsed. Alliances were gone. What began as a slow erosion of order had spiraled into something far more catastrophic. Borders had faded into irrelevance. Resources were hoarded, stolen, or detonated. AI systems, once designed to serve, had fractured under conflicting directives and taken sides. Some served governments, others corporations. A few had declared their own independence. It was this moment, this tangled convergence of collapsing economies, rogue machines, and ideological wars, that ignited the blaze. Humans didn't unite to fix it. They fractured. And then they chose war. To the Coalition, this was unthinkable. Among the advanced species of the galaxy, war was a relic, a painful memory left behind after evolution. Differences were debated in simulation chambers, or settled with reason, mediation, and time. Even the warrior clans of Groloth, once infamous for planetary conquests, had long ago turned their bloodlust into ritualized combat with no death involved. But humans had taken all their brilliance and bent it toward destruction, quickly, unapologetically, and with terrifying efficiency. Within mere months of global breakdown, Earth saw its skies darkened by burning cities. Entire coastlines vanished beneath missile strikes. Drone swarms swept across regions with machine precision, wiping out both military and civilian targets. Nuclear weapons were not a last resort. They were tactical tools. It was the speed that disturbed the observers most. While other civilizations took centuries to refine nuclear technology, and longer still to learn its ethical weight, humans used it mere decades after discovering its possibility. And when they did, they didn't just use it once or twice. They kept refining, kept building bigger warheads, smarter missiles, deadlier payloads. The Coalition archives noted that when peaceful overtures were attempted, neutral AI messages, encoded with Coalition-approved diplomatic language, no response came. In many cases, the humans didn't even notice the probes. They were too busy trying to obliterate one another. But even now, even after so much loss, something persisted. And that something left the aliens speechless. The humans refused to surrender. The cities were burning, yes. But underground hospitals buzzed with activity. Even as shells fell from the sky, surgeons worked by flashlight to save the injured. Drone footage captured scenes the Coalition analysts could hardly comprehend. A medic, face blackened with soot, chest pierced by shrapnel, still pulling a fellow soldier to cover. Two rival units, previously locked in battle, sitting side by side during a ceasefire to share clean water and patches for their wounds. A father teaching his daughter how to use a homemade radio while bombs shook the walls of their basement shelter. In one clip, civilians, unarmed, charged a rogue AI tank using nothing but thermal blankets and fireworks to blind its sensors. They succeeded. In another, a group of children built makeshift armor from scrap metal and kitchen pans, forming a local defense squad they proudly called the Fireflies. They were not just fighting each other. They were fighting collapse. They were surviving the apocalypse and still managing to protect, to love, to hope. Ravel, watching this, could barely process it. She had studied hundreds of worlds, seen civilizations rise and fall. But this was something else. They destroy, she murmured, eyes wide, voice barely above a whisper. But they never stop rising. Scholar floated silently beside her, replaying footage over and over. One moment showed a woman standing on the edge of a broken highway, waving down a relief drone while holding 3 orphans in her arms. The drone was not hers. It belonged to the enemy, but the children needed food. And the operator on the other end, half a continent away, chose to drop the supplies anyway. The alien observers didn't understand how a species could be so contradictory. One moment they unleashed devastation. The next they showed kindness that defied logic. Commander Trock watched it all with a deep, brooding silence. The Grolothian had seen what humans were during the early observation phase. Bold, curious, chaotic. He'd warned the Council not to underestimate them. Now it was too late. They can't be measured like us, he finally said, his voice low and rough. They don't follow patterns. They act from pain, from love, from rage. And they learn fast. Faster than anything I've ever seen. The data backed him up. Despite the ongoing war, human scientists continued to transmit theories, develop technologies, patch old satellites, and build new networks. Even amid planetary collapse, they were designing better machines, not just to kill but to connect, to reach out, to adapt. That was the terrifying part. Because while most species stalled or regressed under pressure, humans evolved. Not over centuries, over months, days, hours. Earth's sky might be black with smoke, but underneath it, something was taking shape. A new kind of human, hardened by suffering, driven by purpose, capable of terrible things but also possibly incredible ones. They should have perished long ago, said They should have broken themselves. But they didn't, said Ravel. And none of them could answer the question echoing silently through the chamber. What happens if they survive this war? Because if they did, they wouldn't just rebuild Earth. They'd come looking for the stars. And this time they'd know exactly who had been watching. A meeting was called aboard the Coalition mothership. The summons went out in every frequency known to the Galactic Council. No delay. No translation lag. Priority 1. The topic Earth. Within hours the great star chamber was filled. Delegates from all 37 observer species assembled. Beings of smoke and crystal, of fluid and flame, of logic and lore. The chamber itself floated in geosynchronous orbit beyond Earth's moon. A sphere of translucent crystal laced with flowing energy conduits, thrumming like a living heart. No ceremonial greetings. No small talk. Only the agenda glowed on the central pillar. Earth, Class 7 Proto-Civilization, Recommended Intervention Review. At the center of the ring the image of Earth rotated slowly, its surface scarred with firestorms, missile trails, and smoke-choked clouds. Ambassador Drillshar of Zenthari Prime, a tall, scaled being with gleaming eyes and a voice like gravel, spoke first. They'll wipe themselves out within decades. Less if their resource collapse continues at this pace. Our files show their nuclear cache exceeds planetary safe thresholds by 312%. That's not survival. That's suicide. He swept a clawed hand across the hologram, highlighting the red zones. Radiation spikes, crumbled cities, craters visible from orbit. This is not evolution. It's extinction in real time. A soft ripple followed, like water lapping against glass, as Ambassador Nulu rose next. A gelatinous entity from the oceanic world of Floor 9, Nulu shimmered with sadness. We must preserve life, they said, their voice liquid and echoing. Even if it is human life. Their cruelty is undeniable, But so is their courage. I have seen them carry wounded across fire, share food with strangers, risk death for no reward. Several others stirred. A few murmured agreement. Most remained silent. They've already received multiple interventions, another delegate snapped. Tech bumps. Ecosystem stabilizers. Linguistic scaffolds. Each time they turn the gifts into tools of war. They are ungrateful, undisciplined, dangerous, but undeniably alive, Nulu countered. They feel in ways we no longer remember. The voices overlapped, rising like a tide. For several long minutes, the star chamber echoed with arguments, some impassioned, some cold, all uncertain. Then the room fell still as Commander Trox stood. He didn't speak at first. He didn't need to. The weight of his silence commanded the floor. Trox, the last surviving warborn of Groloth's Crimson clans, a veteran of 6 planetary skirmishes, a living relic from the Age of Conquest. If anyone understood war, it was him. You don't understand what you're watching, he growled, his voice deep and resonant. You think they're mindless barbarians, primitives playing with fire. But you're wrong. He stepped forward, extending a thick claw toward the holoscreen. A new feed began to play. Grainy, shaky, recorded from ground level. No filters. No enhancements. A human woman knelt over 2 children in a shattered street, arms spread wide as debris rained down. Shrapnel sliced through her back. She didn't flinch. She didn't move. She just held them. The screen shifted. A ruined trench. 2 enemy soldiers met at its center. No words. Just a glance. A shared breath. They shook hands, then turned and ran back into the fire from opposite sides. One was vaporized before reaching cover. The other fell seconds later. Trox let the silence linger. They are monsters, he said. And martyrs. Killers and creators. They destroy more than any species I've seen, but they mourn it. They love so fiercely that it drives them mad. And when they lose everything, they still find a reason to keep going. He looked slowly around the chamber. You're afraid of them because they remind you of what we once were. Not the science. Not the technology. The fire. The defiance. The will. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded, slow and reluctant. They terrify us, Trox continued. Because they survive everything. Famine. Flood. War. Betrayal. Even their own mistakes. When one nation falls, another rises. When their homes burn, they build in the ashes. They carry pain like armor, and keep marching. No one interrupted. Intervene if you wish. Save them from themselves. But know this. If they survive without us, they'll never forget who watched them burn. He stepped back, folded his arms, said no more. A heavy silence followed. Ancient minds considered a future that none of them could predict. Some wanted to help. Others feared what would come of it. A vote was called. The lights dimmed. 37 voices cast in silence. One by one, crystals around the chamber glowed. Green for aid, red for abstention, black for refusal. When the final stone lit, the result was displayed. 23-14, do not intervene. Let humanity burn. Let them end themselves. The chamber slowly emptied. No one celebrated. Even those who voted no avoided each other's eyes. Back aboard their own ships, the delegates resumed observation protocols. Standard procedures. No assistance. No communication. On Earth, the fires continued. The skies remained choked with smoke. But far below the clouds, somewhere in the rubble, a child's voice rang out singing. And though none of the observers could hear it, somehow it lingered. Because some songs aren't meant for transmission. They're meant to be remembered. But humanity did not end. Years passed. The war, once a blazing inferno, began to slow. Not because peace had won, but because there was almost nothing left to burn. Nations had crumbled. Flags meant little. Borders were forgotten. The old systems, ideologies, governments, all had become ghosts in the rubble. Yet from that rubble, something began to form. Not a rebirth, not yet, but a reshaping. At first it was just scattered survivors. Scavengers, medics, broken soldiers, widows, orphans. People who had lost everything and yet refused to die. They began to talk. Share. Trade. Protect one another. And slowly a common understanding took root. No one had made it through untouched. There was no untouched side anymore. Only the burned, the broken, the changed. That understanding became a bond. And that bond became a movement. They called themselves the Iron Dawn. It was not a country. It had no borders, no flags, no anthem. It was not a race or religion or army. It was an idea. Unity through pain. Peace through strength. Survival not in spite of suffering but because of it. The Iron Dawn was forged from the brutal wisdom of apocalypse. That all human life has value when all human lives have suffered. There were no more elites, no more kings or billionaires. The old power was dead. The new power came from those who bled, who starved, who fought, and who refused to give up. Their law was harsh but fair. Their leaders were chosen by merit, not inheritance. Every member of the Dawn had known loss. Every one of them had built something from nothing. They brought order. Slowly, steadily, they restored electricity to shattered cities, cleaned poisoned rivers, constructed vast, modular settlements from the bones of fallen skyscrapers. They reclaimed old machines, repaired satellites, and taught their children not just to read and write, but to code, to innovate, to dream. Humanity, against all odds, had not just survived. It had evolved. And then, for the first time in generations, they looked up. Not in prayer, not in fear, but in curiosity and suspicion. Signals began appearing in fragmented data relays, glitches in surveillance drones, echoes in global communication lines. A handful of engineers, tucked in a shielded bunker once used for cyber warfare, decoded an anomaly. Then another. And another. It wasn't Earth-based. It wasn't human. The truth came slowly, piece by piece. Orbital signatures, frequencies in the upper EM band, transmissions that didn't match any known language, yet repeated in patterns too complex to be noise. Humanity had always wondered whether it was alone in the universe. In the midst of war, they had forgotten to ask. Now, with eyes cleared by the fire of suffering, they found the answer. They were not alone. The aliens had been watching. Satellites in geostationary orbit. Stealth probes hidden in the outer atmosphere. Even footage of Earth's worst moments, intercepted and decrypted from alien observation networks. Images of cities burning, of children crying, of soldiers dying. All recorded. They had been seen. Every scream, every mistake, every failure. And humanity did not react with fear. No, they reacted with fury. The Iron Dawn responded first. Their leader, known only as Salus Prime, authorized a planet-wide broadcast, transmitted in every major language, encoded across all major frequencies, and sent pulsing through every corner of the sky. It was not a message of peace, nor of war. It was a reckoning. The speech echoed through the darkness of space, reaching ears and antennae alike. We see you. You watched us bleed. You watched us starve. You watched us turn on each other. You watched cities fall and oceans rise. You watched parents bury children. You watched hope die. And you did nothing. Not because you couldn't, but because you wouldn't. We are not grateful for your silence. We are not blind to your choice. You waited for us to break. But we didn't. Now you will see us rise. Not as victims. Not as your experiment. Not as your curiosity. But as survivors. As warriors. As humans. The message went viral on Earth first, rebroadcast by every remaining network, painted across digital walls and mobile screens, projected on the last standing skyscrapers. Even the smallest villages with cobbled-together solar arrays heard it echo through static-filled radios. For the first time in remembered history, all of humanity spoke with one voice. Above the Earth, aboard cloaked ships and orbiting stations, the alien observers received the message with a collective stillness that bordered on dread. They had seen countless species rise and fall, but none like this. None who burned their world to ash and then turned the ash into armor. The humans weren't begging for help. They weren't asking for understanding. They were declaring presence, claiming space, claiming vengeance. Within the Iron Dawn's newly constructed lunar facility, engineers were already preparing signal beacons. Not just to shout but to reach, to locate other stars, to begin the journey outward. The observers watched as massive engines were pulled from forgotten bunkers, as scrap metal was melted and reforged into launch arrays, As children no longer hiding from bombs were being taught how to reach orbit. The Earth had gone silent for so long the stars thought it dead. Now it roared. And the ones who once watched in quiet curiosity began to ask the question they had never considered before. What if they come for us? Because the humans were not just rebuilding. They were aiming. And this time they knew exactly who had watched them fall. And who had done nothing. The coalition scrambled. What was once a distant flame, expected to flicker out, had become an inferno. They had anticipated extinction. A slow erosion of a primitive species choking on its own chaos. Instead they got evolution. Not the slow, graceful kind their own species had gone through over millennia. No. Humanity evolved through fire. Through famine. Through collapse. Earth hadn't just rebuilt itself, it had transformed. And now it was looking outward. The Iron Dawn had become more than a movement. It was a civilization. Unified not by tradition or conquest, but by shared scars. The dream of old Earth had died. But its memory lingered in the resolve of those who had survived. They didn't chase peace. Peace had never come freely to them. They chased purpose. Clarity. Strength. Coalition analysts tried to understand it. Their models failed. Projections shattered. Humanity's progress defied pattern. Their ships were crude. Ugly even, but they moved fast. Aggressively fast. Built from the wreckage of old orbital stations, deep-sea mining drills, and weapons platforms once meant to defend Earth from itself. Retrofitted with AI fragments, neutron fission drives, and materials salvaged from meteorite impacts. Their weapons were mismatched, improvised, some even welded by hand. But they worked. Not because they were elegant, but because they were relentless. Cannons that pierced titanium hulls. EMP arrays that shut down ships older than Earth's entire civilization. Shock armor built from recycled war drones. Brutal, beautiful innovation born of desperation. And then there were the soldiers. They were unlike any the coalition had ever recorded. They did not train for war. They were war. These were not recruits. They were survivors. People born in craters raised under drone fire, who had lost families, homes, entire nations before they ever knew a moment of peace. Their childhoods had been battlegrounds. Their lullabies air raid sirens. And yet, they did not arrive with vengeance. The first human ship, Resolute Dawn, pierced the edge of the solar system exactly 9 years, 4 months and 13 days after the global unification. It was ugly, a jagged arrow of welded alloy and reinforced carbon, but it moved like it meant to. It carried no flag, no anthem, just a single name burned into its side. Humanity. The vessel sent one signal, carried on every open channel, translated into every major coalition dialect. We remember who watched. We remember who stood by. We are not coming for vengeance. We are coming for respect. The signal hit like a detonation. On the nearest listening post, officers froze. A single human voice, calm, resolute, filled the room like a ghost returned from the grave. It was not angry. It was earned. The kind of voice that had lived through the worst, and no longer feared anything. Word spread fast. First among observation crews, then to the diplomatic corps, then to the high tables of power, the ruling cores of empires that had once laughed at Earth as a quaint, violent backwater. Now those empires began to shiver. Not because they feared human technology, not even human strength. They feared human memory, the kind of memory that never forgets who turned away, who watched. The coalition convened an emergency summit. Plans were drafted. Embassies suggested. Some delegates wanted to welcome humanity, offer peace, invite them into galactic society with apologies and open arms. Others wanted defenses, contingencies, warnings sent, even threats disguised as protocol. But none of it mattered. Because the humans weren't asking for permission. They were charting their own course. They moved through the Kuiper Belt next. Not just a scout ship, but a convoy. Civilian researchers, engineers, soldiers, farmers, children. Humanity wasn't exploring. It was expanding. Terraform modules unfurled on dwarf planets. Communication buoys linked Earth to the stars. And always their message remained the same. We are not your experiment. We are not your case study. We are not your mistake. We are your equals. Across the galaxy, worlds that had once considered Earth irrelevant now reviewed their archives. They looked at centuries of footage: mushroom clouds, drone strikes, riots, starvations, and then reconstruction, forgiveness, sacrifice, reinvention. Humanity had passed through the kind of storm that would have erased any other race, and come out sharper, stronger, unified not by sameness but by suffering. Empires that had lasted 10,000 years began upgrading their fleets, not because of a declared war but because of a presence, a will. One observer on the edge of the Valori Nebula, watching the human convoy pass, sent a final report before resigning his post. In it he wrote, "They are not what we thought. They were never primitive, only raw. Now they are focused, and they are coming not to conquer but to belong. And heaven help anyone who tries to deny them that place." Deep in Coalition archives, revisions were made, classifications updated. The original label, volatile but containable, was struck through. A new designation was stamped beneath it: humanity, status emergent apex. Recommendation: engage with caution, with respect. But perhaps the most chilling entry wasn't official. It was whispered between scholars, commanders, diplomats, those who had seen the recordings and felt, deep down, the tremble in their own bones. It went like this: humanity was not a mistake. Humanity was a warning that sometimes when the stars look down and do nothing, the fire learns to climb, and it never forgets who let it burn. If this story gave you chills, imagine what's coming next. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss the next chapter in humanity's rise.